Hello, I'm Susan Danby. I'm in the School of Early Childhood and Inclusive Education, and I'm also Director of the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child. I'm so pleased to be able to talk with you about my research interests and passions. I started as a preschool teacher working in preschool and early primary settings, and I have always been really interested in how people communicate with each other, how they talk with each other, they share ideas, how children learn in a social environment. That's always been the focus of my research. But today I want to talk to you about the new centre that QUT is leading. This is the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for the Digital Child. This is the first ARC Centre of Excellence that has at its core education and early childhood education. Now, because there were so many mixed messages around the value of digital technology for young children. So before COVID, we could see that there was a huge interest from the media and from others about the dangers that digital technologies may provide for young children. And there was a lot of questions around how can you have a play-based program when you're also engaging with digital technologies. So you can see by looking at some of these headings here, some of the questions that were being asked in the media around some of the concerns, and very few of them were quite positive. But then post-COVID, we saw the opposite happening. We saw where all of a sudden digital technology was seeming to be the solution to everything. And of course, this position is also just as problematic because, of course, we know that digital technology doesn't solve everything. And we know that during COVID, there were children who did not have access because they did not have internet access at home or because they didn't have the devices at home. So it really showed the divide between those who were engaging with digital technology and those that were not. It's raised really serious questions around the role of digital technology. And of course, the work that our centre will be doing, which is to investigate how to make the best possible environments for healthy, educated, and connected children in a digital age. And that is our overall question for the centre, which is 7 years of research involving 6 Australian universities, 13 international universities, and 19 different partners with which we engage with over the life of the centre. So what does our centre program look like? We have a longitudinal family study of 3,000 families, and these are from children aged in their first year of life. From that study that runs across the entire length of the program of 7 years, we also have nested studies, which are smaller groups of studies where we bring children together and families and educators to look at particular aspects. It might be to look at how digital technology is being used in classrooms, or it might be what's happening in the family home, for instance. And we want to track maybe with 100 families, maybe 25 classrooms, to look at what's going on in that kind of space. And then we also have integrative studies where we're very interested in experimental studies, intervention studies, where we might look at if we change some aspect of how digital technology is used, what would be the implication of that in the family life? So when we think about the studies that we're doing, we're thinking about them across the healthy, educated, and connected programs. We're very interested in a transdisciplinary approach, which says, let's bring together our disciplines and our knowledge to be able to do the kinds of research that we couldn't do in single discipline ways, which again then produces new knowledge, which is going to inform policy, innovation, so new technologies, new ways of using them in classrooms, new guidelines for use, and of course in practice in the everyday practices of digital technology use at home, in school, in museums, in a whole range of different contexts. So if we think a little bit more about the kinds of methods, because this is such a large centre, we have lots of different ways that we will be looking and understanding the issue. We will be looking at qualitative projects, quantitative approaches, and also looking at a whole range of different methods as well. The really important part of this work is the co-design part. And here we're very interested in having children very much involved in designing the kinds of technologies that they will find valuable and useful. We'll also be co-designing with teachers, with educators, with parents, and all of the people who provide services for children and families, museums, libraries. We're very interested in working with a very broad group of Australian families. To help us with this work, we have the Children's Technology Spaces. There's a brand new one that's been built at QUT up on the education 4th floor, and we're really excited to be able to bring children, families, educators into this space to be working and for us to understand about how children engage with digital technologies, but also to work with technology developers as well and others around how can we design better kinds of technology for all children. Now, I mentioned our partnerships before. We have international partners, which are our universities here, and you can see we have a range all across from UK, Europe, and into the States. We also have our partners that are industry partners that are very important to us in terms of helping us to be able to provide opportunities for us to work with them in designing and thinking about digital technologies. For instance, we have a project with Lego at the moment where we're very interested to understand how children playing games and how we can look at that from an emotional well-being perspective. And of course, we have government, professional, and community partners as well. And you can see there some that you're probably very familiar with, such as the Australian Human Rights Commission, Early Childhood Australia, C&K in Queensland as well. So what do we hope to have out of this centre? So with the centre, the outcomes that we're working towards are having dedicated screen time policy for the whole child. At the moment, there's diverse views from education and from health around the values of digital technologies, which is really can be quite conflicting. And so we're wanting to look at a policy that is informative for all aspects of the child's life. We're wanting to look at digital education practices. How can we make digital technologies valuable learning tools in classrooms? We want to design guidelines that will support innovation in healthy and education settings. And of course, we want clear frameworks for digital rights and digital safety. We know that increasingly commercialization can raise a number of questions around the rights of children to being safe and to have privacy in terms of their data not being shared broadly. It's a very big issue. And of course, the final one is we want to build teachers, educators, professional workforce people, and researchers who can understand and work across this transdisciplinary centre. What is our legacy? Our legacy that we want to be remembered for is helping and supporting children in their well-being, learning, and their capacity to be socially and digitally connected. We want to make sure that our young people are informed and are agentic, are active in being able to critically engage with digital technology and to lead in this space as they move into the workforce. Now, from an educational point of view, it's very useful to think about how this centre can map onto the Department of Education research priorities. And here are some examples that are taken from the priorities from the Department of Education and looking at how the centre can orient to and speak to some of those concerns. So On the left, you can see what the priorities are, and on the right, here you can see some of the ideas that we're thinking about in terms of how we can support this. So we're talking about how to make healthy social connections. So for instance, families and schools can communicate with each other in digital ways, where families can communicate with their loved ones all across the world. We're looking at how we can design curriculum and pedagogy that really supports young learners in a digital space. So that's a very local example of how we look at the practices and the policy of the work to inform what's actually happening every day in classrooms. So that's my discussion for today. I hope you're really interested in the centre. If you would like to know more about it, I'm happy for you to have a chat, talk with your friends and your colleagues about this. But watch this space, because you'll see that there's lots happening in this space as we go forward.